Hello and welcome to your November horoscopes. First and foremost, I would love to thank my Patreon members, the North Node tier, for financially supporting this work every month. And then it becomes public on YouTube at the midpoint of the month when we change seasons. So thank you so much for supporting this work. And yeah, let's get right into it. In the month of November, we go from Scorpio season, which is a fixed water sign, to Sagittarius, which is a mutable fire sign. Fixed signs are the modality of when they hold the energy for the season. So Taurus is in the middle of spring, Leo is in the middle of summer, Scorpio is in the middle of fall, and Aquarius is in the middle of winter. These signs are meant to focus and sustain the energy of the season of their specific element. So for Taurus, it's earth. For Leo, it's fire. For Scorpio, it's water. And for Aquarius, it's air. Now, they also have this signification of being stubborn, of not moving, of not changing, which is true. They are fixed. However, their point is to sustain energy. That is different than the mutable signs. So the mutable signs are Pisces, which is the end of winter going into spring, Gemini, which is the end of spring going into summer. Then we have Virgo, which is the end of summer going into fall. And then we have Sagittarius, which is the end of fall going into winter. And mutable is exactly how it sounds. It's changeable, it's movable, it's malleable, it's flexible. And each mutable sign also is designated to an element. So for Pisces, it's water. For Gemini, it's air. For Sagittarius, it's fire. And I'm missing one. I'm missing one. Pisces, Gemini, Virgo. Virgo is the earth. So the vibe of November is fixed water. And what you're going to find in the month of November are all of these grand water trines between Mars in its domicile of Scorpio, Saturn retrograde in Pisces, and then Neptune retrograded back into Pisces in the month of October. And then Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, which is a cardinal fire sign. And all of this water energy and how they are all speaking to each other in our harmonious trine is what makes this month possibly emotional. It's about feeling to heal it. It's about catharsis and releasing of emotions that might have been pent up. It's about grieving and mourning. It's also about dreaming and imagination, incubation, the pregnant moment before something becomes birthed into the collective, into the physical reality. This is a time to work with the water element. If you don't have much water in your chart, this is by transit an invitation to understand what water is. Water is ever flowing, it cannot be contained. That's why water and earth go hand in hand together because earth provides the container for the water to flow. Water is movable. So this is a lot about moving your body and doing somatic work, doing some working with the water element, crying, expressing your emotions in however way they want to be expressed through either speaking it or into an art form or into therapy or counseling or healing sessions. So I think November is this incredible opportunity for us to slow down and to really ask ourselves honestly how we feel about things, how we feel about our life currently. We are at the 11th month of 2025. We're preparing now. Our energy is preparing and we're getting into this death cycle here, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, when we're in the thick of fall and things are starting to compost. So we get our energies ready for the Aries ingress that happens in March, which is the spring, which is the seeds are coming out of the soil. We have two lunations this month, the full moon in Taurus and then the new moon in Scorpio, which is interesting because now the new moons happen at the end of the month versus at the beginning of the month. So it does sort of asks us at the beginning of the month to release something and then at the end of the month call something in or use that energy as a seeding moment. We have a lot of movement in the sky. We have Mars will ingress into the sign of Sagittarius. So Mars goes from its domicile of Scorpio, which is more quiet, more stealth, more determined, into the wild, risk-taking sign of Sagittarius. Then Venus will ingress into Scorpio in its detriment. So it'll go from its domicile of Libra, then into the Mars ruled sign of Scorpio. Uranus retrograde will ingress into the sign of Taurus. And this is going to complete that 8-year transit of Uranus in the sign of Taurus since 2018. And Mercury will retrograde back into the sign of Scorpio. And we will also have a Mercury retrograde this month between the signs of Sagittarius and Scorpio. The Sun will ingress into the sign of Sagittarius. And then Venus at the end of the month will ingress into the sign of Sagittarius. So again, we go from a lot of like water energy to at the end of the month, we'll get into the mutable fire sign of Sagittarius. There's a lot of planets that are pivoting and changing directions. So Mercury will retrograde on November 9th. Jupiter will retrograde in Cancer on November 11th. Saturn will station direct on November 27th. And Mercury will station direct on November 29th. So those are the major ingresses and retrogrades. And we're going to do something differently for each sign. I'm going to pull tarot cards for each sign to give you some messages. And yeah, this is maybe not going to be like a day-to-day forecast for your rising sign, but a more overarching theme of what to prepare for as we head into 2026. So let's get into your sign. Hello, Sagittarius, and welcome to your November horoscope. This month is going to feel very busy. We go from the fixed water sign of Scorpio, which is a 12th house season, to a first house season, the mutable fire sign of Sagittarius. How I like to describe this energy in general for everybody is the phoenixing moment, right? Scorpio is going into the depths of your soul, doing that alchemization, that transformation, confronting your fears and doing the shadow work, and then going up into the fire sign of Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. This is going to feel very good for you, to be honest with you. And because Mercury will go retrograde between your sign and Scorpio, and then Mars will ingress into your sign at the beginning of the month, and Venus will ingress into your sign at the end of the month. So there's a lot going on. So let's just get started here. Thank you so much for being here. On November 4th, Mars will ingress into the sign of Sagittarius. And so when Mars is in your 12th house, and kind of allowing you to be more active in terms of the habits you might have, the thought patterns you might have of self-undoing and your relationship to the unknown and the unseen. The 12th house also deals with aspects of all that feels foreign to us and unknown to us. The 12th house is a section of the chart where it is right after the sun rises, right? That's your ascendant, it's the horizon line. And so the 12th house is the time of day when the sun is illuminating the sky and everything that was previously seen through the nighttime all the celestial bodies, all the stars, all the planets then become hidden. And so when you have a 12th house season, this is a time to do the things like shadow work, doing the healing journey, continuing your healing journey. It's a season to intentionally isolate and recuperate your energy and a time to go within. So that when you are in your season, which is Sagittarius, which is a first house season, this is the time of rebirth and coming out and where you'll have more energy. So when Mars goes into your first house, you're going to feel fiery. You're going to feel like you have more energy. This is such a vibe shift. And Mars rules your 12th house of Scorpio and your fifth house of Aries. So maybe during Scorpio season, you were also dealing with some hidden enemies because the 12th house is the house of hidden enemies. Or you might have been grappling with some jealous exes or just some energies that maybe you weren't really vibing with, let's just say. And so using amulets like the evil eye or using stones like obsidian, and I always hold my obsidian palm stone when I read for people for protection, making sure to have that energetic hygiene also when you're in a 12th house season is going to be really important. Now, I read this thread on Threads that I don't know if she was a baby astrologer or she just like, I don't know what it was. But she was like, how is every Sagittarius rising doing with Mars in the 12th house? And I responded to that thread by saying, well, it depends, right? Because Mars has dignity in the sign of Scorpio. And so if you're a night chart, which for Mars is a malefic that does well in a night chart, and also because Mars in Scorpio is the nocturnal feminine expression of Mars, that for most people, Mars in Scorpio is actually not going to wreak havoc, but actually be helpful in your healing. It's going to make you feel proactive. It's going to actually make you confront some of those fears that are underlining your psyche. So I think that to say that generally is maybe just bad astrology or bad delineation. I don't know. But again, I'm reading for the rising sign. Everybody's going to have to look at their own personal placements. This is a general reading for just the rising sign. And you want to check if you have a day chart, a diurnal chart, or a nocturnal chart because Mars will behave in different ways in your natal chart. And I'm sorry to say that I'm already in week 5 of teaching Astrology 101, but maybe you'll be able to catch the next time I teach it. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent like Sag risings do. I'm also a Sag rising. Now that Mars is in your first house, Mars is the planet of action. It's very masculine and it's in a fire sign, which is diurnal and it's expressive. And in the sign of Sagittarius, this is like taking a risk and being bold. Okay. So in the beginning of the month, you might feel the surge of energy. And when Mars goes through the first house, though, just be careful because you might be more prone to accidents and you might be more prone to not paying attention. So just be very careful, especially when Mars crosses your ascendant. On November 5th, there is a full moon in Taurus at 13 degrees at 8:19 a.m. Eastern time. Please adjust for your time zone. Okay, so this full moon is happening in the sector of your chart, which is the sixth house that deals with what you do on a day-to-day basis. This is your daily habits and rituals. This is also the house of health and your work environment and your pets and coworkers. So this is a cadent house, and the cadent houses are about proximity, the people in our lives, and also what we know. So having a exalted moon here, a lot of Sag risings might be very focused on their health and also, the day-to-day habits, because the moon is also a cyclical kind of planet. the day-to-day habits that you need to do in order for you to be well fed, well nourished, well resourced, in order for you to do your life, in order for you to live your life to the best of your ability. So this is where the exalted Taurus full moon is happening, and the sun is still in Scorpio in your 12th house. So, the ruler of this full moon is Venus here in the sign of Libra. And what's interesting is I feel like the month of November is also echoing what happened in the month of October, because 28 degrees is the exact degree of the new moon in the sign of Libra. That was a new moon in the sector of your chart that speaks about friendships, community, and groups. And this is also a point of your chart. Sorry, I have to pick this up. That talks about your long-term goals and plans. So having Venus here, I think it has been really lovely for a lot of you Sag risings. This has maybe brought in new friends. Maybe you are solidifying your relationships with your friends and the groups and communities that you're a part of. But also, since that new moon in Libra also was co-present with Venus and Libra, you might have been doing a friendship audit, actually. You might have been looking at your friendships, being like, you know, this friendship is not really aligned with my values anymore. And maybe I either need to talk to my friend, communicate with my friend about this, or I need to let this relationship go. And so there's something about this full moon, right? A full moon is a release, it's an ending of some sort. And Venus being here at that same degree of the new moon, you might have a conclusion of that new moon time around October. I think it was 21st was that new moon in Libra. And what I do like about this new full moon in Taurus, like I said, it's an exalted moon. And whenever we have lunations in Taurus and Scorpio, this also talks about like worth and value, our embodiment. Scorpio is about detachment and, being able to surrender to the journey of this part of the season that's about death and decomposition in order for us to have fertile soil to grow something new in the spring. And this is exalted moon is also saying like there is some part of you that is worthy, has always been worthy, but you have to recognize that within yourself, whatever it is that you do, right? It could be something, maybe a resource that's not in this capitalistic structure. Like maybe you're really good at forming new bonds and relationships. Maybe you're really good at communication. Maybe you have a skill set that's related to food, just thinking about Taurus moons. And you're able to be of service to others because the sixth house is also where we tend to be really busy, a house where we could easily get burnt out. And so the moon here too is just warning you not to overdo it, but to make sure that whatever you do here is of a higher purpose, not because you feel insecure about you feel insecure about your lack of a certain skill set or your imposter syndrome or whatever the case may be. And that could be a part of your Scorpio story as you're going through the 12th house and you're looking into all the ways that you might self-sabotage yourself. This is also after Venus separates from a square to Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, which is also exalted. And, I think there is some expansion that's happening in your life with Jupiter there in the eighth house. Jupiter wants to have you grow in the ways in which you form intimate bonds, in which you receive money and investment, and healing your debt and healing your poverty consciousness. So I think obviously with the government shutdown and people losing their SNAP benefits in the month of November, a lot of people are thinking about food insecurity and about like, are we going to make it through the month of November? I think we're in a financial crisis. We just haven't really like named it yet. And I think the astrology collectively for November might show us signs that we are in a recession. I think money, obviously, in late stage capitalism where all the wealth is being hoarded by the 1%. I think this is just going to be a theme for a lot of people. So Sagittarians are no different. But I think the ways in which you're able to harness that energy and be resourceful in your community, as indicated by Venus in your 11th house, is going to really benefit you during maybe some of the harder moments or the more challenging moments of November. So, going forward on November 6th, Venus will ingress into the sign of Scorpio. And so Venus will now go into your 12th house. And Venus is in its detriment in the sign of Scorpio. So Venus goes from its domicile, where it's really well resourced, into its detriment into the sign of Scorpio. So Venus rules your 11th house and your 6th house. So those topics of those houses are imported in this transit into your 12th house. So again, like topics of friendships and the ways in which your friendships might be deteriorating and needing to be audited, your daily habits and routines, and how the ways in which you self-sabotage yourself in your habits and routines. I would really look out for your health in the month of November, just because when the ruler of your sixth is in your 12th and its detriment, you might be going through some health issues, and also Mars in your traveling through your first house. Whenever Mars transits through your first house, that can bring like an irritating nature. Some of you might break out in a rash. I'm just thinking about the significations of Mars, which is like heating, right? And it's a hot and dry planet mixed with a fiery sign. And like I said, like don't overdo it, don't over exercise, but making sure that you're using that Mars energy for being courageous and brave and taking action, but not like overextending yourself. And yeah, I think Venus being transiting through your 12th is, anytime a benefic, whether it's in detriment or fall, is lo a lovely transit. This is the time to do like self-worth work again, a time to do a lot of healing, because the energy from the last week of October going into mid-November, there's a lot of water in the air. We're having these grand water trines, which brings a lot of tumultuous inner like volatility, as we see also like as I'm filming this, there is a hurricane that is heading for Jamaica. And so whatever happens astrologically also is correlated to natural events. And so there could just be this overwhelming feeling of emotion, since all of your water houses are the moksha houses in Vedic astrology, which are the houses of liberation. So can Sag rising sit with all of the emotions? Can you be honest with your feelings? Can you liberate yourself from some of maybe the ties energetically from your ancestors, from intergenerational trauma, from the ways in which you've inherited certain things that in this lifetime you are meant to break the curses of? And this is all deep healing work, right? Shadow work, ancestral healing and veneration. And and as somebody who's also a Sag rising, I am definitely going through this as well. And it's not easy work, but this is the kind of work that is called for when we have all of this water. Now, water is a very important element for Asian cultures because you constantly want water to flow, right? If water stays stagnant, that's when it's not good for the body. It's not good for, stagnancy of energy. And that's why a lot of water keywords are associated with money, because we're talking about money. It's energetic too. It needs to flow. So having Jupiter there in the eighth house, if you are financially well, if Jupiter is blessing you with an abundance of food or resources, are you then taking that and giving it back to people? That's the best way to use Jupiter in the sign of Cancer. Sorry, that was a huge tangent from Venus ingressing into Scorpio, but that Venus now entering Scorpio is going to activate that grand water trine. And then November 7th, Uranus retrograde will ingress back into Taurus, which is your sixth house. So, like I've been mentioning, almost every forecast, Uranus will now re-enter Taurus, your sixth house, and this is the house of habits. Again, something is being disrupted or changed in your habits. A lot of Sag risings might have had some health issues in the last 11, no, sorry, 8 years since 2018. And so now Uranus is like, okay, have you been paying attention to your body? Have you been paying attention to your sense of self-worth? Have you been doing that work? In the form of the day-to-day habits that will support you. Even something as simple as like getting your teeth checked. And I know like teeth teeth is something that's ruled by the planet Saturn, and it's so interesting how teeth is such a marker for wealth because most insurances don't include teeth. I've spoken about this so many times because it's my one big gripe against like this healthcare system. And if you are financially well enough to be able to afford dental care, then you can afford dental care. But a lot of poor people can't. And so they end up having to either pull their teeth or they have a lot of tooth decay. So something as simple as getting your teeth checked is a sixth house endeavor. So just making sure that you're on top of your health and making sure that it's not just physical health either, even though Taurus is more of an embodiment thing, but your mental health and your spiritual health and your emotional health, the holistic signature of what makes you human. And then on November 9th, Mercury retrograde will happen at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So this will really impact you if you have, well, for all Sag risings, right? Because Mercury is transiting through your first house, but you'll definitely feel it if you have Sag rising around 0 to 10 degrees. So Mercury is tracing over your ascendant. Mercury rules your 10th house of career and your public the public and how the public sees you, and also your seventh house of Gemini, your one-on-one partnerships. So when the seventh house ruler is in your first house, your partner just might be more involved if you have a partner. Or the other person, your one-on-one relationships just might be more of a presence in your life during this Mercury retrograde. Your boss could just be in your face, or you're renegotiating contracts with your boss or a loved one. But just think of all the mercurial things like communication, contracts, commerce. I think those are like the three Mercury things. And going through your first house, right? You're contemplating something. Mercury is in its joy in the first house. The first house is called the helm. This is where our souls descend into our body. And Mercury does really well in the first house because it's a very busy, it's a very like it's the fastest moving planet in our solar system. So your mind just might be really busy and you just might be really busy with work and relationships in during this Mercury retrograde. And you're looking back, think back to during the Mercury pre-shadow, which was on October 20th, I believe, and just look back at what was going on during that time. On November 11th, Jupiter will retrograde in Cancer at 25 degrees. And so Jupiter now is changing directions in your eighth house, and Jupiter rules you, and Jupiter rules your fourth house of home. So when your chart ruler starts to retrograde, this is another indication that you're doing some reflection, you're doing some recalibration, you're doing some reviewing. Okay, and eighth house topics is obviously the most literal sense is because Jupiter also rules your fourth house, and the eighth house is the house of inheritance. Maybe a family member left you an inheritance, and you're like, what am I going to do with this? Or you have a family member who's ill, a father or a mother or an elderly person, since Saturn and Neptune are back in your fourth house. You could have inherited property, but you're, either going through the contracts of it, or you and your partner are maybe going through some, maybe you're deciding to separate and you're separating income. Now, don't panic. I'm only saying this because I have to tell you what I see. But if you and your partner are like fine and you're on solid foundation, then great. But if you and your partner, or you and another, like your significant other, are on shaky ground, this could just be you like reflecting and reviewing like what your needs are and what you want out of this relationship. Also, because Uranus is also retrograde in your seventh house of one-on-one partnerships. Now, let me see here with Jupiter going backward. Yeah, so something that Jupiter has been trying to do is increase your finances, is increasing the ways in which you receive money, like big money, investments and retirement stuff, you know? I would say retirement is more 11th house maybe because it's the second from the 10th. That's like money that you get from your job. But it's big money. It's like investments that or shared money that you have with the other seventh house because it's the second from the seventh. So now you're reviewing, you're reflecting, maybe you've saved a bunch of money and now you're like, how do I invest it, for example? Okay, so then on November 18th, Mercury will retrograde back into the sign of Scorpio. So Mercury will go back into the proverbial unknown spaces and um, going through some reflection here again. You want to look back to when Mercury entered the pre-shadow back in October 20th-ish, 21st, to see what your Mercury retrograde story is about. Like, what are you reflecting on? On November 20th, there is a new moon in Scorpio at 28 degrees at 1:47 a.m. Okay, so this new moon happens at 28 degrees. And a new moon is when the moon and the sun are in alignment in the same sign. And it's actually, I just noticed this opposing Uranus. So the next aspect the moon will make is an opposition to Uranus. So there is some sort of surprise element. It's conjunct Mercury in Scorpio, which then means it's also opposite that Uranus. There is an element of, oh my God, I didn't know this. This is information that I literally was not privy to. I didn't understand, or now I see it very clearly. And the ruler of this new moon is Mars, which is currently in Sagittarius, transiting through your first house. So, whatever you do find out on this new moon or information that was hidden and now you see it, it could have. Okay, so there's two ways to see this. This could make you feel like defeated in some way. Mars still is a malefic. It has this energy of severing or cutting away. So, also, like I said, be careful around November 20th, specifically around this new moon. You could, since, like, again, if you have Sagittarius rising in and around, let's say, like 0 to 15 degrees, if Mars is on your ascendant, you could be prone to burning. You could be prone to cutting yourself accidentally, getting into an accident. And then with this new moon, Mercury opposition to Uranus, Uranus is at the anaretic degree, and Uranus has this sudden, unexpected nature. Just be very careful, okay? I don't like where these planets are in the chart because of the houses they are in, you know. But again, this is just to warn you so that you take the necessary precautions. And what I do like about it though, the positives, I'll focus on that, is that the new moon and Mercury are coming off a trine, exact trine to Jupiter in Cancer. So Jupiter in Cancer is expanding whatever seeds that you're planting on this day. And then it's applying to a trine to Saturn and Neptune in the sign of Pisces. And I really like this grand water trine happening in on this new moon in Scorpio. This is a great new moon to set intentions for healing, for doing the necessary ancestral work, to do the things that you've been putting off and to cut away all that shit, if I can say shit, that does not serve you. Okay. Like I said, in Vedic astrology, the fourth, eighth, and 12th houses are the moksha houses of liberation. What are the things that have been holding you back? What are the things that you've been self-sabotaging yourself around? This is a great new moon to set those intentions. Okay. Moving forward on November 21st, the sun ingresses into Sagittarius. This is your sign. I'm sure you're going to feel so good because you're going to have the sun and Mars in your first house. This is the season to shine. This is the season to be seen. You're going to have a lot of energy. And yeah, also happy solar return for all the Sag suns who are watching this. But I really like when the sun enters my first house because I also just feel like I have energy and I just feel like empowered to just get out there and do stuff. And then on November 27th, Saturn stations direct at 25 degrees of Pisces. And so Saturn is going to go forward for the last time in the sign of Pisces in your fourth house. And Saturn rules your second house of your personal finances, income, your third house of your community, your neighbors, your siblings, communication, and writing. So during Saturn's transit in Pisces in your fourth house, it might have felt really heavy. You might have had to help out your elderly parents or elderly people in your life. You might have just been going through a lot of boundary making with your family members or ancestral work, as Saturn kind of tends to do that. But it's going forward for the last time. Maybe not in your lifetime because it will be back here in about 30 years, but in the near future. So, yeah, I mean, give it a little time because anytime a planet stations, it takes a little momentum for it to go forward. So, yes, Saturn is moving forward. This area of your life that was being reconstructed, restructured, is finally ending its chapter. On November 29th, Mercury stations direct at 20 degrees of Scorpio. And so Mercury is changing directions now. And then on November 30th, which I think y'all will really like, Venus will ingress into Sagittarius. And I really like when Venus enters the first house because this is the time I get my haircut, my once a year haircut. When I do anything related to like beauty or aesthetics. Venus also rules your 11th house of friendship, so a friend can really help you out or a group of friends. And again, Venus also rules your sixth house of your daily habits, routines, and just taking care of yourself in general. And also, Venus is the planet of attraction, so you might just be getting a lot of attention during the later half of November. So I'm gonna pull three cards and the first card, oh my God, the card on the bottom is the Two of Cups. Hello. The first card is going to be about the challenge for November. Okay. All right. What is the challenge for Sagittarius for the month of November? I'm like, is there no challenge? Okay. What is the challenge for Sag risings? Okay, the Five of Cups. Now, this is pretty on brand with what I said about the Grand Water Trine. It's about allowing yourself to truly feel. You can only heal if you feel it, right? And that's a scary thing for a lot of people, especially if you haven't ever done that work before. Oftentimes, we distract ourselves because we don't want to feel something. We either eat, we either watch television, we doom scroll, we do everything to not feel something. We try to fill a void. I'm guilty of this. I do this all the time. But the season of Scorpio, which is the 12th house and the grand water trine, is asking you to feel because there is a Two of Cups behind this figure. And interestingly enough, the Two of Cups was at the bottom of the deck. There is an opportunity that you don't see, which is there, right? In quantum phoenix, in quantum phoenix, quantum physics says that everything was already created in this reality. It's about our perception of it, okay? So, because you're so focused, and Scorpio is a fixed water sign, and the beauty of Scorpio is being determined and focused, but the shadow aspect of Scorpio is also not knowing when to let go. And so, there could be this energy of like you fixating on something that didn't go right, that you're like, why didn't this happen for me? Or why didn't this work out for me? But rejection is redirection. A no is redirection, okay? And you might be missing out on an opportunity because you keep focusing on what has not gone right. Okay, what is the opportunity for Sagittarius in the month of November? Okay, the Knight of Cups. So there might be an opportunity coming, like if I'm going to take this literally, this could be a person, like somebody coming into your life in the month of November. I mean, it is Mercury retrograde, so this could be somebody from the past. Um, if this is like an X factor, like an ex friend, an ex coworker, an ex boss, or whoever from the past is coming in, and you get to decide, do I want to engage with this person to end this chapter and have closure or not? And say you want to move forward. Okay. So this could be an opportunity for you to heal if this person does come back. For a lot of you, I feel like this has something to do with, again, relationships. Okay, possibly romantic in nature, just given the, um, you know, procession of these cards. Okay, what is the blessing for Sagittarius in November? What is the blessing? Ooh, the King of Pentacles. I love this. Okay, like I said, once you have the courage to let go and say, okay, those three cups, it didn't work out for a reason. I don't know why. I don't know, like, because a lot of these things that happen, we're not privy to, okay? Once I let go, I open myself up for this opportunity of abundance. Jupiter and Cancer in your eighth house. I have this opportunity to really grow something through my skill set. Now, the King of Pentacles has all these grapes on his robe. I'm just going to use gender in this case just to make it easy, but he, she, they, them. Okay. Growing grapes takes a lot of skill. It's not easy actually, and if especially if you're growing grapes to make wine, it takes incredible skill. So something that you can ask yourself is what skill set are you trying to cultivate in order for you to grow your abundance. I feel like for a lot of Sag risings, the Jupiter and Cancer transit is this. It's like the incubation before Jupiter enters Leo, which is your ninth house, and that's when all of the seeds will sprout, essentially. So I hope that was helpful for you, Sag risings. As you know, I'm a Sag rising too, so this reading is for me too. And I hope you have a beautiful November. I will see you next month.